the basics of hardware. Some people interpret hardware a little differently than others. This is how we're going to do it in the class. I'm going to start out. We're going to talk a little bit about input devices, how we get things into the equipment and how we get it out of the devices. I'll usually call them devices. We say computing devices. You can think of whatever kind of device you're most used to using, but what we don't want you to forget is that smartphones are computing devices. You know, laptops are computing devices. A kind of funny looking laptop. You might have a desktop with some stuff connected to it, computing device, and so forth. Tablets, another computing device. We're going to start out with the system unit. Computing devices, practically forever, have a system unit. They have some kind of a circuitry, a board, and on that board, I'm going to draw a little box, is a processor. Okay? The CPU, Central Processing Unit. A lot of devices nowadays, it's just a chip. You know, it's just one chip that does all the work. That takes the instructions from the software and executes them. Okay. And in red, I'm going to list memory. The one color doesn't really have a whole lot to do with anything else, but there are chips connected in here that are memory. Okay? And there can be different types too. There can be RAM, which is what I'm going to refer to right here, random access memory. That is memory that is active while the device is on and gone when the device is off. Typically, it's volatile. We won't spend too much time on cache right now. It's real high-speed memory, and it usually rests somewhere between the processor, and memory. Sometimes built in to a processor, sometimes in between. It's really high-speed memory for the computer to keep things that it's going to use often. Then we have read-only memory. Somewhere's in there, there would be chips that retain the software. Sometimes that's called firmware. Nowadays, what's used a lot for read-only memory is flash, which is on all the time. Okay? Inside that unit, then, I'm going to draw it in right now, there would be some type of electronic bus that moves everything between. Okay, so you have software in memory, you load it in the memory, and it moves up to the processor, gets processed, and moved back. When you boot your computer, some of the software from the ROM goes in and gets the system started. Connected to the motherboard, connected to it would be devices like input devices, maybe a keyboard, and we can use the screen for both input and output. Input and output, right? We can touch the screen. You might have a mouse. For output, you might have a display, and so forth. Speakers, printer could be connected to your computer. Alright, now I'm going to scroll up here a little bit. Yeah, let's go right there. Expansion slots inside devices, especially like there can be some in a laptop. More often in a PC are expansion slots, and you can take an expansion slot and put a card in there to do something. It might be a video card, even though often video is built into the board, but you may want to add, it might be a special slot for a video card. I had a situation where I had a relatively expensive camera that only used primarily FireWire to download. Well, we had a PC, this was for a school actually, had a PC and we wanted to use FireWire to download it. It wasn't real expensive to buy the card, installed the software, and then we were able to connect the device using FireWire. That makes sense? Way better solution than buying another computer. Thus the advantage of an expansion slot. Very popular nowadays, USB ports, usually built in somewhere is coming off of this system board. FireWire was developed by Apple a number of years ago, really a fast way to move information, but nowadays with the advancement in the USB, I think what are we up to, USB 3 or whatever they call the newest one, which is really quite fast. So we found other ways, so I would say you will see less and less of FireWire, except in this nice Canon camera that we have, not personally, but for which a school has, in which they needed to be able to use that. You can, years ago, you used to be able to get a network card to put in so you could put your computer on the network. Well, being on the network is almost a requirement nowadays, so there's a network interface card built right into the system. Now, in laptops, you know, if you have a laptop, somewhere there's an antenna connected to that, plus there could be a place to plug in a wire. Okay, so this takes care of, you know, depending on your machine, could take care of both. You could have one of those for Wi-Fi. You just, what it would amount to is an antenna somewheres, or if you have a laptop or a PC, they'll have a what they call an RJ45 plug-in, which is different than an RJ11, which is a phone plug-in, the old phone plug-in. Some of you are probably too young to even know what those look like. All right. So, RJ45. So then you can, you know, have a wired connection, which we talked about earlier. Really important. And then, this is key, the electronic bus. Okay, this ties together the processor, the memory, the slots, and the ports. Okay, let me re-emphasize that up here. So I'm in the diagram up here. Somewhere's in there. And then it's more sophisticated than just that. There could be a north bridge, south bridge, or there could, depending on the system, but somewhere's electronically, they move the information. Okay, so let's say I connect a, right here, I want to make it black. Let's say I connect an external hard drive to a USB port. Well, that USB port somehow connects to the bus so information can move from the drive, let's say in the memory, like a piece of software in the memory, because if it's being executed, it must be in memory. Okay? Now, let's keep moving. Storage. This is a little bit of review. Local storage. Local storage, typically somewhere near the device, you know, like connected to the device. For example, you could have a hard drive in the box, like in the laptop or whatever, or you may connect a hard drive to the machine. You may use a USB drive and plug that in to your machine and use that, or you may have a DVD player, you know, either built in or connected, in which you can burn DVDs. Some of that's kind of going away. You know, it wasn't so long ago we taught about the floppy drives, but not much anymore. Okay? To a couple other, you can store information out on the network, and I'm going to draw a picture here just in a minute. So typically networks will have some drive, either a letter or something. Usually they have a name, but a lot of times they assign a letter to it also. Going way back to the old floppy drive was A, hard drive was C, and so forth. Removable storage, DVD, flash drive, and so forth. Okay, and you also have cloud storage, where you can go via a network, typically thought of through the internet, typically. Okay, so let's look at a diagram here. If we were to look at here at the college, you could have a device, okay? And let's say this is a PC in a lab here at NIACC, and it has here's the system unit, and it has a hard drive, and has a keyboard, a display, a monitor, and so forth, okay? Now that device here in campus, that's connected to some other computing devices that eventually connect to another computer called a server. And so via these network devices here, we can send information from here to the server. And the server has a large hard drive, and it can keep track of many students. Okay? So we can put it on a server there. Also, if you wanted to, then you may, here at the college, through the network, we're also connected to the internet. Okay? So you could be on your computer here and have something saved in memory, and you say, you know, I want to keep that. I could also send it to, maybe, we'll just use, today we'll use Google as an example. And they have lots of storage in their data center. I couldn't tell you for sure, but one of the largest data centers, and they're expanding it. They're actually adding to it. They're building a new building in Council Bluffs, Iowa. So you can store it locally to your hard drive, to your flash drive, you know, plugged in, or you can send it to the network, or you could send it all the way out into the internet, down into some place where Google keeps it. Of course, there's all kinds of concerns with security and all that, but that's for another chapter. So, hopefully that gives you an overall view. Make sure, and just as a reminder, make sure you look through the summary. There'll be other documentation on how to have a peer review of your outline. And then there's a brief discussion form, which is discussed another place in terms of your outline, and you'll fill that in, then drop me an email so I know you filled it in and I can go look at it. That is it for Unit 1. During some of the weekly summaries, I will summarize some of the items from the outline. That's it.